Good morning, everyone, and let's start with this seminar that's titled Transdisciplinarity in Art, Science, Engineering, and Design. I'm Cristina Miranda de Almeida. For those of you that do not have never met me before, and thank you for your presence here. And I will do a mixture of reading and presenting spontaneously, and please, you can interrupt me whenever you want, okay? So, let's go. The objective of the seminar is to develop the first schemes of a possible methodology based in theories of collective action to analyze and facilitate transdisciplinary dialogue and collaboration between science, engineering, art, and design. Such theories are usually applied to understand different kinds of collective actions. For example, regarding actions that appear in ecologist, feminist, or pacifist movements, among others. I'd like to say that this seminar comes from the material that was worked in this seminar, comes from a collaboration with the Network of Sciences, Engineering, Arts and Design, this SEED network, and it was supported by the National Science Foundation grant, and it was also presented in Yokohama at the Congress of Sociology in July. And it's a work that has started and is an ongoing work, okay? And this material was also developed together with Benjamin Tejerina. He's a sociologist and I'm an artist. So we would like to work transdisciplinarily so that we could see the product of our collaboration also as a kind of product that reflects the main concepts, okay? We propose that these theories can also be pertinent to analyze in a very structured way the interaction between the main dimensions, agents, resources, contexts, and strategies of transdisciplinary action. Therefore, we will use these theories to frame a method for identifying the main elements that constitute this kind of action in general, and in particular between art, science, design, and engineering. This methodology could support action coordination towards transdisciplinary collaboration addressed to different stakeholders, taking as reference the distinctions between these three kinds of collaboration introduced by Repko. Three kinds of collaboration by Repko, okay? Multidisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity, and interdisciplinarity. They conform three ways of dealing with complex problems, research problems, or collaborations in any field. So let's see which are the difference between these three elements, okay? According to Repko, multidisciplinarity is not the same. We are used to using these concepts in a little loose way, but they are not the same. They are defined multidisciplinarity, as you see in the photo, several disciplines at one time, but makes no attempt to integrate insights. Interdisciplinarity studies a complex problem by drawing on disciplinary insights and sometimes stakeholder viewers and integrating them. But the really radical level of collaboration between disciplines could be achieved in the transdisciplinarity approach, in which concerns that which is at once between disciplines, across disciplines, and beyond all disciplines. This is an approach in which not a unique, only one discipline can tackle alone. So they seek to integrate everything, but according to problems that are common. Okay? The hypothesis is that collective collaboration in transdisciplinary research environments can be understood as a form of collective action according to the following definition. I quote Benjamin Tejerina here, okay? Collective action is the result of a social action or collective challenge carried out by a set of formal and informal interactions established between 1. A plurality of individuals, collectives, and organized groups who share, to a greater or lesser extent, a sense of belonging or collective identity among themselves. And 2. Other social or political actors with which they come into conflict. This conflict is triggered by the appropriation of, participation in, and transformation of relations of power to achieve social goals, and above all, through the mobilization of certain sectors in society. Repico's definition helps us to understand that despite the different forms in which transdisciplinary collaboration has historically developed, there has been a constant core around which different ways, objectives, motivations, and concerns span towards its achievement. This core is the social need to deal with 1. Topics, 2. Complex problems or knowledge about the world in a unified sense that goes beyond the capacity of each discipline and implies a collective endeavor materialized in actions. Therefore, it is crucial to understand how these collective actions are shaped by means of discussions, negotiation and renegotiation processes according to specific historical and cultural circumstances. The development of a typology of different categories of analysis to understand transdisciplinary collaboration actions can be crucial to fully support and ground such actions, making the most of possible resources and finding the right institutional, educative, and social framework for their development. Transdisciplinary action is a dependent variable in relation to a few elements that are categorized in the theory of collective action. The translation of these elements can serve to generate a specific action theory for collaboration between disciplines. These elements are why, where, when, and in which way collective action happens. This is the theory of behaviors, Meltzer. In the case of our network, in the case of collaboration between art, science, design, engineer, the same questions apply. The relationship between cost and benefits of collective action, that's to say, the dependence of collective action on available resources, group organization, and opportunities, and on the strategic and political factors involved. Theory of resource mobilization, McCarthy and Zaud, Jenkins, Zaud and McCarthy, many theoreticians study these aspects. Third, context interaction. In the case of collective action, is the same. It can be applied to this kind of collaboration. Fourth, political aspects. Theory of structure of political opportunity, Chris, Taro. And fifth, collective sense and aims. Theory of collective identity, Melucci. as in collective actions, there is a blend of intentions, resources, and limits. Collective actions imply intentional decisions and interaction structures inside a system of opportunities and restrictions. So there is a need to build a sense of belonging to a collective in relation to transdisciplinary action. The concept of interaction structure that is central in the case of a social movement frames the environment that enables the existence of a series of interactions or the network of informal interactions between a plurality of individuals, groups, and organizations, the continuous actions in a collective, as in Turner and Killian. Or the network of informal interactions between a plurality of individuals, groups, and organizations. The analysis of these interaction structures must take into consideration all dimensions in which an action takes place: the micro, the meso, and the macro. In the case of transdisciplinary collaboration, the very researchers are those who produce face-to-face actions, negotiate strategies within organizations, coordinate their own actions in relation to other institutions, dialogue with decision makers, have access to media, and promote sensibilization actions to increase consciousness regarding this kind of collaboration. In our case, in the network of science, engineering, arts, and design, can be an example of this thread of actions across many spheres and scales of activity that recommend actions to be taken according to different levels of agency. The concept of interaction structure can also be essential to analyze how transdisciplinary research and creative work, learning, and knowledge transmission processes develop regarding agents, tools, and environments. Because transdisciplinary agency, that means researchers, managers, decision makers, and funding institutions, interact in different degrees in all these spheres and scales. Therefore, it's necessary to see how these interactions are produced and coordinated, either in a positive or in a conflictive way. And the effect of these actions on improving the conditions of transdisciplinary action and research across science, engineering, arts, and design. Science, including social science and physical ones. According to theories of action, the most important interaction structures that shape collective action happen in different spheres. For some happen in the face-to-face situations, particularly between peers inside each group or collective, some within each organization or institution. Others emerge from the challenges that social actors pose to elite decision and policymakers, and those that spread and impregnate society in an invisible way. The processes of interaction that happen in each one of these structures and between themselves shape how successful action can be. Having the broad matrix of these structures will improve our capacity to suggest the best actions to different stakeholders, especially to those in position of making decisions, to identify and overcome obstacles and to enhance opportunities for collaborative action across science, engineering, arts, and design. The method is developed as a three-dimensional matrix taking into consideration different kinds of actions, crossed with different kinds of agents and their spheres of interaction between each other. The aim is to explore opportunities and obstacles, to develop a transdisciplinary collaboration, analyze how it is emerging, and plan future actions. Time will add a fourth dimension to this matrix. The method can contribute to improve the vision on how transdisciplinary action change knowledge production, and how the aims, motivations, and interactions around transdisciplinary problems synchronize and find resonance or not in an environment of limited resources and changing opportunities in which there are collaborators and opponents that need to dialogue. In this sense, each suggested action must be related to the big picture, but addressed to each different stakeholder in its own sphere of action. For example, artists, designers, engineers, social sciences, educators, funding agents, different spheres. We can differentiate between four kinds of stakeholders, broadly speaking: individuals, communities, public institutions, and private institutions. Actions analyses should take into consideration basically two kinds of agents: the sympathy and the resistance agents. Sympathy agents are individuals, collectives, and organized groups that work to facilitate transdisciplinary dialogue and collaboration around similar or equal objectives. Resistance agents are other social and political actors with which they come into competence or conflict. The analysis takes into consideration four types of stakeholders: individuals, communities and alliances, private institutions, and public institutions. Communities are structured and formally organized like professional associations and ad hoc interest alliances linked to disciplinary fields, for example, colleges of architects or college of engineers. No? Public and private institutions are not linked to disciplines, like banks, for example. They are beyond. No? And they are acting in four levels: local, regional, national, and international, apart from the 6 kinds of action. So it's a matrix that needs to cross each action according to its scale, agents, the kind of action. In this matrix, 90 possible situations for each kind of action, kind of typology. You can see from the peer action towards an institution or between peers, or even if we formed a group here, probably we are from different fields. How can we negotiate all these actions and dialogue of the different spheres, right? So, these 96 possible situations, they are helpful to see the broad pictures and the kind of map, and to analyze how transdisciplinary action is being achieved, to plan future action, to see where we are not doing well, and to produce a qualitative change it's a kind of also kind of mirror or self-help for transdisciplinarity, because transdisciplinary research and collaboration, even if it's not in research, is very difficult for a series of reasons that we will see afterwards. So these actions can be considered and be grouped into these 6 categories, okay? Actions for increasing resources, let's say advocating, when we are fighting for or searching for resources, funding, human resources, all kind of collaboration. The second one, actions to support networking, is another kind of action, not linked exactly. It can deal to resource, but it is a different kind of action. At least these were those that we tried to understand, okay? Education actions to prepare, because we can do whatever, from this level we can do whatever we can, but we cannot, if you don't receive proper education to dialogue and to really deal with transdisciplinarity, you are not used to that. Usually you are not prepared in universities, not even lower levels. Actions to support research for researchers, for example. This is not to educate research. This is exactly in the research process. How can we deal with that? How can we improve our collective action? Diffusion, dissemination, and sensibilization actions to create visibility towards society. In this case, it's not addressed to researchers themselves, it's addressed to society to understand this kind of action. Society understood us, even the other agents at other levels, institutions, banks, and all this, or funding researchers. At European level, at many levels. No? Towards society to sensibilize different social groups. And action, the sixth one, action to create interaction structure that we have been analyzing previously, right? So each one of these actions, the first type, actions for the increasing of resources, including advocating. These actions aim at getting more access to funding, human and technological resources, to research and collaboration across disciplinary borders. Action to support networking. The aim of this kind of actions is to foster engagement, participation, formal and informal actions for exchanging knowledge and networking actions, resilience and solidarity actions for supporting network projects. Okay? For example, when you construct big umbrellas to protect this kind of transdisciplinary action as the network for seed that is trying to be this big umbrella. And education actions to prepare researchers to manage transdisciplinary collaboration, preparing researchers to manage collaboration across disciplines, develop a common language, because one of the main problems in transdisciplinary action is language. We need to make an effort to try at least to understand the concept, because sometimes even different disciplines use the same kind of concept, the same word, but that means totally different. For example, I'm from the art field, and also for an architect I have 2 degrees, and the design on this kind of field. And the word representation is totally different, the way you deal with it, than how it is used from social science. So we need to be aware, at least aware, so we can understand, okay? In particular, it's necessary to solve questions around methodological and theoretical dominance of one discipline on others, and questions around theoretical and methodological integration and developing adequacy. Because if you don't do that, it's like an obstacle, it's a constant hindering obstacle. And because of this work has been done to offer suggestions for the National Science Foundation, United States, on how to integrate different approaches, transdisciplinary approaches into their curriculum at different levels, we need to see which are the obstacles. A lack of dialogue is one of them, a common language, or at least an intention to see the challenges and to address the new opportunities. So, actions to support research. This is addressed to researchers. These actions involve listening and follow-up to maintain a system of tracking opinion from research in a network. The purpose is to update the cartography of research on the network and the results of their collaboration, creative feedback between peers. For example, retrieving information about the experience of having transdisciplinary, because probably each one of us had either multidisciplinary experience before, or interdisciplinary experience, or transdisciplinary experience, but you never reflect upon them. We don't have the reflection in a structured way that could be very helpful, even for us, to deal with that in the next time. We just learn that almost individually. It's like there is not much reflection on that. Diffusion, dissemination, and sensitizing actions. Sensitizing actions aim at increasing awareness about transdisciplinary collaboration. Let's say this seminar could be a little bit sensitized action, okay, or a paper you write, or try to make it public. They can be carried out in the form of dissemination action and at different spheres. And actions to create interaction structure and to enable agents to support transdisciplinary approaches to be in positions of power in the decision-making process. For example, sometimes it's funny because in my personal experience, once I present a project for a European call, and it was I was totally puzzled because I have 2 degrees. I'm a kind of transdisciplinary person myself. And the call made a point, a very specific point about the value of transdisciplinary approach, and they were fostering that. And the peer reviewer, and the project was rejected. When I got the comments, one of the comments, and a very strong comment from the peer review, this person said that I had not aligned. I was not aligned because first I studied architecture, and then I had a master in design, and then I studied art. I mean, my PhD is in art. So what kind of the curriculum is that? And I said, oh my goodness, this is a call that fosters values. So even in the way we are evaluated in our curriculum, when you apply for a research grant or for a project or any call, even if the call is like this, the peers that will read you or your trajectory, they have another framework. So you can be rejected exactly because of what they offer. So I think we are in a very surrealist situation. There is not a consensus or at least a debate. So opportunities and obstacles in the scale of these actions are identified according to different spheres of interaction. In the scale of face-to-face interactions, such as linguistic opportunities and problems, cross-communication, misunderstandings, emotions, and insights. Second, in the scale of transdisciplinary power synergies, struggles, and competitions, such as those that belong to authority and power elites, inside each discipline, for example, the highest levels that evaluate grants or this kind of things, interest groups. Third, in the scale of institutional, educational, and research structures that are discipline-based and can be seen as structures for new opportunities or as threats to any kind of transdisciplinary action. Fourth, in the scale of the social paradigm that is common in public, political, administrative systems of funding at different levels like national, regional, European, or international. Also, there is a total incongruence between these levels that are not adapted to this transdisciplinary action. For instance, it is considered appropriate that a scholar follows a unique linear disciplinary path during his academic trajectory, and any break in this linear path needs to be justified so that the career is considered adequate to academy and to the discipline umbrella in which it is inscribed, what reflects a Cartesian mode of thinking about academia and constitutes an obstacle for transdisciplinary fluidity. The following chart translates the elements taken from theory of action. So we translate this theory of action into this kind of transdisciplinary collaboration structure to structure the actions suggested to improve transdisciplinary collaboration. So now I'm going to show you not everything because it can be boring, but just sorry. No, sit now. Here. I show you that from these elements we developed a table according to each kind of action. In this table we, for example, classify type, temporal and spatial scale, opportunity of the action, obstacle for this action. We analyze what could be the obstacles and the sphere of interaction. So these obstacles, in which level they can be really more important. For example, let's take one example. For example, funding prize actions for transdisciplinary research at different levels in time and in space, because it's time and space, if it's continuous or in different levels of space, global, national, to promote periodical research prize, for example, a kind of grant for stimulating for research groups with the requirement of the participator of at least 2 fields of collaboration, fostering this kind of clash between, especially because innovation and creativity happens when you clash different fields. Sometimes the very, very strange ones are the ones, for example, music and social science. You can find light there somehow because you break new veins of new routes. To create a space for a normal presence. These were like things that were imagining. This is pure imagination of possible actions to foster the kind of collaboration. What could be the resistance part and which are the levels that could be addressed, right? Because, for example, with the actions of visibility, which kind of support it's needed. And so we went on and on with a list of possible actions in different levels, creating synergies, how to create that, diffusion actions, publications. So we, going back to the PowerPoint, this presentation is published in the network of science, engineer, art, and design. Okay, a little bit different because now it's more developed, but the main test is there if you are interested in having it. And the table, sir. And so I'd like to now focus a little bit on, because my field is art, okay? And there are a lot of initiatives that are trying to foster the inclusion. And the network, the SEED network, is exactly trying to pass to include the A of SEED, the art, in science, engineering, and design. Okay, because art was a little bit excluded so far. So it's how would be the aim of including art, and what is the role? Okay, art rejects to be submitted to the instrumental logic of work. So this can be a good approach, because it can be a tool. Art itself can be a tool to reflect upon the methods. Art goes beyond the designed methods. It doesn't follow the manual. Exactly looks at the manual from a distance and questions the manual. Reinvents functions and functionalities and finalities. Makes use of technology in a different mode. And for art, the possibilities of any technology are not pre-limited according to the instructions of a manual. Technology or methodology or whatever. So art is always trying to push the limits. So it's good to reflect even about transdisciplinary initiatives. So I'd like to show you a few initiatives that are sprouting everywhere. It's a really almost a movement. It's amazing. Many in the last few years. Many of them, and they are very interesting. There is this international network of science and artist programs in science and industry research lab. There is the arts at CERN. CERN, as you know, is the laboratory to research on nuclear research. In Geneva, the important laboratory, they opened a program that is called Artists at CERN. Every year they have grants, they have researchers, they have artists in residence there. So I show you. Then Conexiones Improbables, that is from here, from Spain, basically from the Basque Country and Catalonia, because it started with Disonancias a long time ago, and here in Catalonia and the Basque Country as well. And there's a community of collaborative and co-creative research initiatives aimed at innovation and social responsibility, because beyond and around all this subject of transdisciplinary collaboration, it's also the co-creation subject, how we co-create, right? There is IMERA, that is the Institute for Advanced Studies, and that is in Marseille, that is supported by Roger Malina, and that aims at hosting international high-level researchers, emergent or experienced. Even any one of you can ask for a residency there. You were talking about residencies first. It's open to social science, and you would have a community or the environment to dialogue with other disciplines, not only from the social science, but also from the physical ones and from art. So it's an interesting place to apply. They have open calls every year for researchers, okay? A residence. And to allow them to meet, to carry out work requiring several months of freedom without administrative or teaching duties, and to deepen links with research centers and higher education centers in the region. Okay? There is Arts in Labs. Arts in Labs, this one here, that was in Zurich. That's in Zurich, it's a major biology, physics, and computer science laboratories. Take international, they invite international artists to the lab itself, to collaborate and designers to help stimulate and transfer knowledge, because there is also this knowledge transferring between disciplines, because sometimes, many times, or most of the time I would say, we transfer knowledge, but between peers, not across disciplines, where sociologists know about, artists know, and it's a kind of, it's a protective field. So it's like we're talking for those that already know. So we should also talk for those that have no idea about that and could be very profitable to have this idea, right? So these are places or environments, funded environments that are popping up everywhere in Europe. Symbiotica, and also not only in Europe, also in Australia. For example, Symbiotica is in Australia, and it's an artistic laboratory dedicated to research, learning, and critique of life science. So artists and social science can also be the critical part of in the very process of, in the lab, they have the critique and the experience. So it's more enriching, right? Not after, not with the time frame. And dissonances that I mentioned before. So now I'm going to show you just this is the platform. This here in ArchivesNet, you have many experiences that are around the world now. Those that are in Meta or Art in Lab or Art as Catalyst, many of them, because the ones that I mentioned are not the whole thing. There are many more. And artists at CERN. Collide at CERN is a main strategy of CERN's cultural policy for engaging with the arts. It's a 3-year artist residence program initiated by Arts at CERN in 2011, and it's going on. And by bringing world-class artists and scientists together in a free exchange, etc., etc. And so they have, for example, music and performance, film, dance and performance, okay? And also, they have a prize in Ars Electronica. Ars Electronica is one of the main important venues for the latest electronic art in the world and digital art in the world, that has been just now in September every year, and at the beginning of September. And the last one, and they have a category of prize linked to this collaboration. So it's all is funded and supported. And this year was Ikeda, one of the nominees. Conexiones improbables. Here, that you can then explore if you are interested. That was created in Bilbao in 2010 by the team, and they are linked to dissonances. And what they do, and they have a call, and they put artists in touch with big companies. For example, Formica, there's a design company for this kind of support, or no. So artists go and stay in touch and develop projects together. Or, for example, another call they had, I remember like 3 years or 2 years ago, was to how, the research question was, how can we stimulate women to be more in the science field? So artists would try to help to see how in lower levels, in educative lower levels, could be this implemented so that women start to be more active when they get to the university, to be more interested in the research, in the physical research, because there is a less presence, right? So very, very crucial problems, social problems, that are mainly studied by social science. They are trying to see how other fields could approach that. What could be the solutions? Let's try to explore that. Because sometimes I think they have very good results, very good feedback. Or symbiotica. The laboratory dedicated to research. Okay. They have residences, research, academic programs, seminar series, a lot of things in the center, but in Australia. So after the initiatives, I'd like to show you, for example, this was the nominee, this the one that received the prize of the CERN in Arts Electronica this year. And I will show a little bit. This is not the video of his work that was awarded in Arts Electronica, but it's similar to what he's doing there, because it's not yet uploaded, it's very recent, but he's trying, in the sense is how art can collaborate with big data and representation of data, because he really works with this kind of thing. Ikeda is a Japanese artist, well known for his impressive audiovisual installations, that he will stay in residency over 2 years in CERN, and to develop this kind of, because the director of CERN said, Director of CERN said, Ryoji Ikeda's research project is to look at data in quantum dimensions. CERN's Director General Rolf Hauer explains the CERN data center handles about 1 petabyte of data every day, the equivalent of around 210,000 DVDs from the experiment of the LHC. So it is appropriate that the heart of our scientific discoveries will become the heart of artistic discoveries too. So things are merging in relation. How can you deal with so much data? How can you represent it or make sense of it? So in this sense, artists can be very important, because we are really, it's part of our formative approach to try to make things visible, invisible things visible. So in this sense, let's just have a look about Ikeda's work. It's a new form of visualizing big data, rhythms, patterns, with a different approach, not just a graph. It's in space, it's in sound, with light. And this can be helpful also for researchers in CERN to think about their own process. There is a feedback process, a loop process. They have this data, they give visualization processes and patterns, and then there is a dialogue, right? On this kind of thing. Just continuing. Or, for example, another kind of collaboration that is a very radical kind of collaboration, right, from the art field with scientists. genetic art or bioart. Have you heard of this flower, petunia? Have you heard of Eduardo Kac? Well, this is the name of the work is Natural History of the Enigma, and this is a flower. And you think that the natural color of this flower is pink, but it's not. It used to be white. And petunia, Eduardo Kac is the author, and the central work in the Natural History of the Enigma series is a plantimal, he calls it plantimal, a new life form I created, this is the words from the artist, and that I call Edunia, a genetically engineered flower that is a hybrid of myself and petunia. The Edunia expresses my DNA exclusively in its red veins. Developed between 2003 and 2008, the first exhibit, it was in 2009 in Germany, in Minneapolis, sorry. It encompasses a large-scale public sculpture, a print suit, photographs, and other works. The new flower is a petunia strain that I invented that produced, it's like a product of design, biodesign, through molecular biology. He was collaborating with a lab, molecular design lab, biology lab, and it's not found in nature. The Edunia has red veins on light pink petals, and a gene of mine is expressed on every cell of its red vein. So what he's doing, he's trying, in fact, Eduardo Kac, all his work has a critical layer, okay? Because he's trying to make a shock on you. Oh, this is weird and strange, and have we the right to do that? But in fact, the laboratories are doing this kind of things. So we have tomatoes with fish genes derived from fish. We have different kinds of things that are every day going on. They are invisible, and he just tries to shock you, So he does one flower with these features, and you feel like, wow, are we able, or the very question, should art do this kind of thing? Perform this kind of action, or why? It's a transdisciplinary action, but with a critical approach, but doing the very thing, not just thinking about it. It's a kind of performance as well. It's a molecular manipulation, and he's always dealing with this hazy zone between critique and performative and the very action, but always in a transdisciplinary way. And though it's interesting because he deals with this critical.
I think it's an European project. It's about body art, and it's a kind of experimentation with images of your body, but representing the body of other people. For example, a man with a woman. And they are looking face to face, and you don't see yourself, but the other people.
Yes.
Or maybe, for example, a dancer and people with disabilities.
Yes.
So they think or feel like the dancer. I think it's very.
Yes, it's an augmented reality.
I don't know about this.
The machine to be another. I think this is the
the gender.
Is this the swap gender? Huh? Is an amazing process from the art field that reflects exactly on concepts, of. Let me see. Yes, using body technique, performance, and first-person perspective. It's very interesting because it's this kind of collaboration that produces brilliant, yeah. You don't need to explain, you just feel it. Because it's with these glasses that are called, they explain it. The synchronicity of actions have triggers the brain to think that you are the other person. Yeah, you feel. Yeah, this can be a very good example of concepts that are being treated from social science, with art, with technology, new technologies. Yeah. So it's a good, it's the Fab Lab Barcelona. So it's a very, you see, these kind of initiatives are great because they are showing that this collaboration can be possible. I have so many things open here. I'm getting lost. Close. So, and for example, another example is Paul Thomas with nano art, and he always is always collaborating with laboratories that are developing research on nanotechnologies and nanoscience. So all his art is based on this and making this scale of matter visible, right? And producing different things. You can explore if you're interested in different, because it would take a long time to go through all these. There is a book that he just is media art histories, and there is a book on the history of nano art and different collaborations. And this one is Gilberto Esparza, Plantas Nómadas, and this is an autonomous robotic symbiotic ecosystem. It's like art and ecology, how art can also make more visible the need for a different approach in ecology. This is a video. And I think this is the last example. This is a very strange machine. Oh, it's so big.
Las plantas nómadas son entidades biocibernéticas dedicadas a proteger. simbióticos sobreviven en ambientes afectados por la contaminación del agua. Al ser estructuras autosustentables, son capaces de incentivar la sinergia entre los individuos, la naturaleza y todas sus especies.
It's such a collaboration between different technologies, people from different fields in technology and art, and with concepts from ecology.
Las zonas de desastre ecológico afectadas por la industria y los desechos de grandes centros urbanos en los que operan las plantas nómadas son sitios que representan un núcleo propulsor de enfermedades irreversibles y de un alto índice de mortandad. La planta nómada es un sistema aplicable a cualquier punto geográfico del planeta perjudicado por estas condiciones. El Salto de Juanacatlán, en el estado de Jalisco, México, es una comunidad establecida en las orillas del río Santiago, extinto paraíso natural, ahora hostigado por la infección de las aguas que un día constituyeron su máxima fuente de subsistencia. Las plantas nómadas actúan a través de la unión de distintas formas de inteligencia, que en conjunto conforman una especie más fuerte proveída de comportamientos autónomos, toma de decisiones y voluntad propia. Son una modalidad de anticuerpos con el potencial para restaurar a pequeña escala los daños del entorno, reivindicando la acción del desperdicio y los contaminantes. Se desplazan únicamente cuando necesitan de su alimento o ante la emergencia de alguna amenaza externa, para evitar el movimiento innecesario y así autoconservarse. Su sistema locomotor consta de una serie de articulaciones impulsadas por un mecanismo de engranes y palancas. Su organismo se integra por un sistema nervioso, un sistema biodigestivo y algunas especies vegetales que antes abundaban en la zona y ahora habitan en las plantas nómadas. El delineamiento de su esqueleto está basado en el estudio de los métodos de interpolación o construcción geométrica llamados polígonos de Thyssen, también conocidos como diagramas de Boronat. El resultado es una estructura ósea sólida y geométricamente armónica, diseñada para restarle volumen, disminuir su peso y así optimizar su consumo energético. Su sistema sensorial les ayuda a reconocer el ecosistema y registrar datos que le permiten actuar de manera consciente, haciendo uso de un microprocesador que interpreta valores para tomar decisiones. Un sensor ultrasónico realiza un escaneo del espacio en 18 tiempos, permitiendo tener una lectura cada 10 grados. La información obtenida se analiza en el microprocesador para precisar la orientación que debe tomar. A su vez, un sensor de compás la secunda para ubicarse en relación al norte. Sus patas delanteras tienen sensores ópticos que sirven para evitar colisiones resultantes de algún cálculo erróneo o de un obstáculo que eventualmente se interponga en sus trayectorias. Cuando las plantas nómadas encuentran agua contaminada, la succionan para almacenarla en su sistema biodigestor y memorizan la dirección que las ha llevado hasta ese lugar para facilitar futuras jornadas de búsqueda de alimento. Después se desplazan nuevamente para encontrar un espacio donde protegerse de las crecientes del río. En ese refugio reposan durante días para digerir el agua que tomaron. El sistema biodigestor de las plantas nómadas acelera el proceso de biodegradación del agua. Al usar celdas de combustible microbianas, realizan un proceso bioelectroquímico que produce electricidad y a la vez mejora la calidad del agua. Cada celda está compuesta por una cámara cilíndrica, un ánodo de gránulos de grafito, un cátodo de carbón, una membrana de intercambio protónico y un catalizador de platino. En el agua contaminada residen múltiples especies de bacterias que se ocupan de biodegradar los desechos orgánicos y de transformar sustancias tóxicas. Las bacterias autóctonas del agua residual colonizan los gránulos de grafito y con su metabolismo liberan electrones que son capturados por un sistema de cosecha de energía para cargar un grupo de baterías. El único desecho de la planta nómada es agua purificada con la que se nutren las especies vegetales que habitan en ella. Como otra fuente de energía, las plantas nómadas aprovechan la luz solar. Los altos niveles de contaminación en el agua se reflejan en el aumento de la producción eléctrica dentro de las celdas. Este excedente es utilizado para emitir un canto que convive con los sonidos del ecosistema. Después de varios días, cuando las bacterias han consumido todos los nutrientes que había en el agua contaminada, la planta nómada completa su ciclo y vuelve a buscar alimento utilizando la energía que acumuló.
I will stop the video now, just to continue. And another example from the art collaboration.
Distintas formas de inteligencia, que en conjunto conforman una especie más fuerte proveída de comportamientos autónomos, toma de decisiones y voluntad propia.
From the art across disciplines. And maybe sometimes we think that art can be exactly one of the elements that can activate different disciplines, can be very helpful to help in this transdisciplinary dialogue. Sometimes it's difficult to find, a quantum physicist to talk to a social scientist and to deal with the criticism, but art can make it happen in a different way, and the message can be conveyed. So I really think there is a lot of work to do in this sense, a lot of reflection to be made, a lot of experience to be done, and I invite we all to carry out this, because it's really necessary. In this world, it's increasingly complex. It's very difficult that we, with this idea that we have of these small houses or blocked from other, no, it's our field, my field, is my research. Oh, why is this person talking about this? No, we have to collaborate. Each one should, my personal opinion, each one should keep their own expertises as fields, because it's the best way to deep some kind of knowledge, but should also be open, super open across, and be very receptive, because exactly this openness will foster creativity, innovation in institutions, in knowledge creation, production, dissemination, and all fields. And so I think really it's important. I don't know if you had already had questions or experience that you would like to share, or how was your experience with other fields sometimes.
Does this work?
Yes, because otherwise it's not recording.
Yeah, I come from linguistics, and in linguistics, usually it's placed in humanities or sometimes also in social sciences, especially social linguistics. But many subdisciplines in linguistics are truly, I don't know if transdisciplinary, but at least interdisciplinary. For example, yeah, when I was studying linguistics, I started to explore also biolinguistics, which is a blend of biology and linguistics, especially to study the origin and evolution of language, for example, and how language is implemented in the brain, etc. So, yeah, something that maybe it wasn't thought of a few decades ago, you know, now it's beginning to be explored more and more. It's not my own field of specialization, but I always thought that linguistics is very interesting because of this, because there are many transdisciplinary experiences, you know. For example, also in computational linguistics, there's many collaboration between mathematicians and linguists,
neurologists,
and well, in my own, what I wanted to ask is because in my own research project, in my research group here, it's also transdisciplinary, but in the disciplines are literary studies, history, and social linguistics. So they are very close disciplines, so to speak. So I always wonder whether there is like a continuum of possible transdisciplinary experiences. So very easy and intuitive collaborations with other disciplines, like for example linguistics with other humanities or social sciences, and whether there is a much bigger obstacle with, for example, if linguistics wants to collaborate with, I don't know, with sometimes biology or mathematics. There are, of course, there are experiences in that sense, but I always wonder whether, so to speak, we should always try, or if there are more or less easier possibilities of collaboration between disciplines. Because intuitively, I think the answer is there are easier collaborations, but I wonder whether this is a limitation that we impose on us, you know, like, of course, these disciplines are similar to each other, or if there should be no limit whatsoever, you know what I mean? I mean, it's more a reflection than
I think there should be no limit, and I really think that there are some, let's say, if we say like a spectrum, for example, social science would be like yellowish, all shades of yellow. They are still in the yellowish tone, no? So it's hue. So it's easier. This dialogue is more. I think it's easy. Some barriers have already been overcome. But when the yellowish has to dialogue with the blue. And make a green, this could be really a challenge.
Now, after all these experiences, I know that there can be transdisciplinary collaboration and all that, but sometimes I wonder how, for example, could linguistics collaborate if there is any need to collaborate, I don't know, with geology, for instance, you know? Maybe it's just me that I can't just imagine, or there haven't been any experiences like that in the past, but I just want, I mean, sometimes there are no common issues or problems, so it's just us that we can see further, you know what I mean? I mean, or how could astronomy deal with linguistics, for example? I mean, I understand that.
This is easy.
Yeah,
because we try to communicate with the.
Yeah, in that sense, yeah. I mean, sometimes it's just us that we don't see the possible implications, or you know, because yeah, we can start imagining things, you know, but sometimes it's very far away. So
in my experience and from the art field, because we are always trying to be interdisciplinary somehow now, I think when you try to imagine between geology and linguistics, which could be the approach and how to start to collaborate, you need to be a little bit more abstract, to raise the level of abstraction of and to see if there is a kind of point in which linguistics can contribute to a knowledge building production. For example, I'm not a linguist, okay? But I imagine that in linguistics, grammar It's a kind of palimpsest of experiences, of transformations out of the blue here, like very intuitive thing, that if you could imagine a linguistic reading of territories.
Actually, yeah. For example, if there is a paradigm or something like that, yeah, I understand, like, in an abstract sense.
And then you apply.
Yeah, you can apply
kind
this
of model of understanding.
Models or paradigms. Yeah, that could be the case.
To understand, for example, cities as a language. We can read from an old approach. You can. It used to be known that you could read space or read shapes in space, and read also topographies. Or in the Aboriginal experience in Australia, they sing the territories in order to bring these territories alive. Do you know these experiences? The Aborigine in Australia, they sing the territory. There is a book about this. Is it Chatwin? The line of the song lines. I think this is the title of the book. Aborigines, they activate their presence and the territories and the stories of the past and memories through chanting and through songs. And they travel the territory and they have to sing in the places. They have to sing to the mountains or to different places. And so they activate their memory and their history and their myths and traditions and the way of perceiving space and understanding themselves. So I see a link between, at least between reading, literacy, and linguistics.
Yeah, actually, there's always been a connection between geography and linguistics, you know, dialectology and all that. But yeah, but geography is not geology, so I mean.
But geology.
But yeah, you can always think. It's just, I think sometimes it's just researchers who are limited in the way. I mean, if you're not used to having collaboration with other disciplines, sometimes it's
dangerous.
Yeah.
It's dangerous. It is very
also,
dangerous.
And one important thing is the power relations between disciplines, because there is like a hierarchy, you know. It's like we as linguists are supposed to know a lot about, for example, if we want to use mathematical methods in linguistics, we are supposed to know about mathematical methods, but mathematicians are not supposed to know anything about linguistics. So when they try to apply something, it's like, okay, we are the superior ones. We're not supposed to know about yours, but you are supposed to know about ours. You know.
Yeah.
And yeah, but well, this is a social problem and in science in general. But yeah.
Sometimes I feel like if you worked on problems, or problems not in the bad, from the bad approach, okay, problems like questions or something that's necessary, it is easier. It makes it easier. For example, architecture or the city are good examples of a very transdisciplinary collaboration. Because see, all institutions have to, from the sewage to the water to urban planning to people to activities, different activities, all must be emergent, and at the same time is a kind of geology of activities. If you think about geology in a fluid way, not in a stratified, and I think this can be also a good model to understand activities and other fields. So we need to be bold and to try to, from our expertise and learning and what we really, be intuitive and to say, make a question. How can this field that has nothing to do with my field could be, how could I contribute to this field, right? So you start to come from the very contributions to the scheme to a little bit abstract, not to the concrete, to the abstract, and then you make the approach, and then you can go to the concrete. And you can impose different models of understanding that can be very creative and that can be very innovative in the way to understand things, because you are coming from your expertise and you are merging with another expertise that had never ever been taught. Especially because maybe physical science are more closed They have been more closed. But now they are the ones that are opening also to the art field because they are seeing the interest in doing that. They are really, it has been historically, it happened naturally, but suddenly it starts to be like we are every time more into our boxes, and apparently we are collaborating, but we are not really. So I really love when we have these challenges, the kind of intellectual and creative challenges that you see, well, from my expertise, how can I dialogue with this field? Especially as a supervisor in PhD, sometimes students, because they are from the art field, they come to me with very unusual ways of looking at research, and I say, well, how can we deal with that? How can we make a contribution in this field? That the problem is exactly this. This is one, apart from lack of linguistic, lack of common language, we don't have the knowledge. Because it seems that the other field is the one that is the only one that can talk about that. So you are treading on very unstable ground. It's difficult. But why, when you build a building like this, and architects, although architects are directing the project and are creating project, they are dialoguing with so many other fields, no? And everybody has a common language, because the building is a practice, is a historical practice, and it works because at the end the building is done, and you are not aware of what exactly is the part of the architect or the other fields that are here, right? It's not well, there is a difference between these, and there is another concept that I think is in complexity, in complex problems, we cannot disassemble things. They are, if you disassemble, they don't exist. You can disassemble machines. Maybe interdisciplinarity could be this, like say, you can disassemble this watch, so you have all pieces, and then you can assemble again. It's a mechanical thing, everything is separated, then there is the watch. But in complex systems thinking and in complexity, if I collaborate with you, you collaborate with me, although I come from an expertise and you have your expertise, we cannot disassemble the result. It is valid only as a unit. If you try to disassemble which is my part from which is your part, it will be impossible to see. You cannot turn the time back, and the pieces cannot be taken apart. Only in mechanical stuff you can do that. In complex ones, you cannot do that. And this is maybe the good way of looking at transdisciplinarity.
Now, in linguistics, there's a big issue about data visualization methods, because there have been many different ways of presenting data, and now it's become a theoretical concern how to visualize data, because the way you visualize data can affect also the knowledge you have of this data. So, and I had never thought that, for example, art could be as important as I mean, I had never thought about that. How could art be such an important thing? Because it can give insights to the way we visualize data. I had never thought about that. I suppose other people have thought about that a lot, but I had never thought about that, and it's very, very important.
Art, yes, because art is one of the roles of art. The commitment also of art is to provide or to give, to contribute with different visions, or make the invisible visible, or to give a new kind of perceptive layer on things that we think we know. So, and also about representation. Art has the tools to represent, no? And the attitude to go beyond the manual. So I think that artists are being integrated, for example, in many, like The Guardian and newspapers, and they have departments for data representation, different departments in different media, very important media companies, and they are designers and artists are being integrated, and directly, because it's a kind of contribution that you cannot find from other fields. And this multisensory is not only, and this is important, Ikeda, for example, is an art installation. You have sound, you have space, the body is inside the data. It can be a metaphor for something. It's not you in front of a screen looking at a visual display of data. Somehow, I think in the Ikeda's process, you are immersed in this process. The whole environment is surrounding you. You are inside something. And you have sound, you have the visual, you have the presence, you have the body, probably you have interaction.
Which kind of effect does this contribution have on the human brain, let's say?
Do you know that McLuhan said that the medium is the message?
Yes, yes.
If you use different medium and if you work with the content in a different way, with different technology or different discipline or from a different point of view, the message will change. So I think it's knowledge building, and a different contribution for knowledge building, creating new knowledge. That if you deal only with the visual graphs, the traditional way of dealing with data, are not even enough, because we have now so much data, we have so much information, that if you don't look for different ways, it will be hard to make our own way, to make meaning, to construct meaning of that. So I think we need to stop now. I thank you so much for your presence.